Good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar. Our webinar today is on planning for sustainability. For this webinar, you will be in listen-only mode using either your computer or your phone. Please do ask your questions using the chat window over to the side. And the webinar is being recorded. You will be able to have the recording link. It will be sent to you afterwards, along with copies of the slides. This webinar is actually brought to you by the Centers Collaborative for Technical Assistance, which is a National Science Foundation grant, and it is supported by the ATE Collaborative Impact Project, the ATE Centers Project. It is led by a group of 5 National Science Foundation centers. You can read the names of the centers on the list. Our purpose is to respond to a request from the Department of Labor to provide technical assistance from the Advanced Technological Education Centers, to provide technical assistance to the Department of Labor tax grantees regarding success coaching, convening, knowledge management, and peer-to-peer learning, as well. And the information we do provide is relevant for Department of Labor grants, National Science Foundation projects and centers, and workforce-oriented programs of all kinds. Our deliverables include webinars such as what we are doing today on existing and new solutions. They are live and recorded with Q&A, and they will be archived on atecentral.net. And we will also include other online media, including videos and transcripts. We will also be inviting folks to regional discipline-specific conferences, and we will be giving you best practices and hosting convenings. And we'll talk about one of those that's upcoming in July as we get to the end of this presentation. We have several presenters today. My name is Ann Beheeler. I'm the Principal Investigator and Executive Director for the National Convergence Technology Center. I'm in the lower left-hand corner. We also have Rachel Bauer, who is the Director of the Internet Scout Group and ATE Central. She is the Principal Investigator for that group. In the middle, we have Elaine Kraft, who is Principal Investigator and Director for the South Carolina ATE Center of Excellence. And we also have Elaine Johnson, who is the Executive Director and Principal Investigator for the BioLink Center. And we have Anna Koliopoulos, who is the Assistant Director and co-PI for the South Carolina Advanced Technological Education Center of Excellence also. We are ready for our first poll, and for this, Mike Lasecki is going to help us. Would you please select whether you are involved with a National Science Foundation grant, with a TAC grant, both, or neither, so that we will know what our audience is working with. We'll give you a few minutes, or not minutes, a few seconds to answer. My screen is actually not showing the results, so would one of my co-presenters let me know when that is showing?
And it's Mike. We're looking at the results of the poll that shows 12% are involved with an NSF grant, 58 with a TAC grant, so that's the majority, 24 with both, which is pretty interesting, and 6 neither.
Okay, and this is Mike Lasecki. He's actually the Principal Investigator with the Maytech Center based at Phoenix, and they are in Phoenix, and they are responsible for the recording today. Thank you very much. I appreciate it very much. Thank you, Mike. All right, we're going to start off first with Elaine Kraft. And Elaine, I'll let you introduce yourself here.
Thanks, Ann. I am, as Ann said earlier, Elaine Kraft, and I'm with the National Resource Center for Expanding Excellence in Technician Education in South Carolina. I'd like to start today by addressing the webinar topic itself, sustainability. Why should we be concerned with this? If you think about what grants are designed to do, planning for sustainability makes sense. Grants are designed to either jumpstart programs or provide specific support to accomplish specific, relatively short-term objectives. What grants aren't designed to do is to provide operational support on an ongoing basis. No matter how good your work is or how much you accomplish, you can't depend on grant funding to keep it going. Those who make grant awards have high expectations, not just for a spike in activity, but for longer-term impacts. Those making grant awards expect the grantee Science Foundation has this requirement, as is stated in their publication 14477, aspects of both centers and projects will be sustained or institutionalized past the period of award funding. A sustainability plan is an essential component of the project description in every competitive proposal. Next slide, please. Likewise, the Department of Labor also has expectations for sustainability. In the TAC Round 4 RFP last year, there was a clear assignment of points to be awarded based on the strength of a sustainability plan within a proposal. The RFP specified that DOL expectation that grantees will integrate strategies and activities included in their proposal into their non-grant funded programs for continued success. In addition, DOL expects the third-party evaluation of a TAC project to investigate the contributions and commitment of partners and key stakeholders toward program sustainability. Next slide, please. Now that we know what is expected, it is clear that this is a topic that we need to fully understand and address. So the first question may be, what is sustainability? What does this mean in the context of a grant-funded initiative? To answer this question, let's look again at what those who are funding us have to say. Both NSF and DOL define sustainability. Interestingly, NSF puts the definition in the context of value to the host institution, partners, and target audience. If something is really of value to those who derive benefit from the grant-funded effort, then they will want to sustain it. This leaves the door open to the possibility that additional funds may be necessary and possible to sustain the effort. DOL, on the other hand, looks for evidence of integration into non-funded programs for continued success. We will now turn our attention to additional ways to understand and plan for sustainability of grant-funded projects. It is always a good idea to see what can be learned from research on a topic you are trying to understand. For this perspective, I'm turning you over to my ATE colleague, Rachel Bauer. Rachel?
Thanks so much, Elaine. It's great to be here today and to be sharing a little bit of information that we've gleaned from our work at ATE Central. Next slide, please. ATE Central acts as an information hub for the ATE community, and our goal is really to amplify the impact of the ATE program and support the wonderful work that ATE grantees are doing across the country. We do that through our online portal, which you can find at atecentral.net, our resource collection. We pull together information about all the wonderful curriculum and professional development materials that are created by ATE, as well as a suite of services and tools. And what I'm really going to talk to you most about today is the sustainability support that we've been offering to the community. Next slide, please. So this sustainability support was done in, could I have the next slide, Ann? In reaction to and in response to an articulated community need, and with ongoing community input. So we really wanted to make sure that we were creating a service that was of use to the community. We did a survey related to community needs, and sustainability support really rose to the top of the list for a lot of the ATE PIs. And what we came up with in conjunction with our colleagues at Ithaca S&R was based on research from within and beyond the ATE community. And we offer workshops, webinars, and a host of online resources as well. Next slide, please. So we're going to be looking at 5 different research reports in just a moment, but I thought it might be helpful before we looked at those, after Elaine's very helpful discussion of what constitutes sustainability and talking a little bit about what our funders expect, to remind ourselves of what we mean by sustainability, sort of the nuts and bolts of it. Here are a few examples. One would be that a host institution commits to maintaining some of the faculty or staff positions that were hired under your grant funding. Another might be that some of your project partners agree to supply external resources to fund some of the components after that Department of Labor or NSF funding sunsets. Or maybe some other organization or another college or university commits to continuing to use, improve, and disseminate some of the materials that you've developed during your project. So those are 3 good basic examples of sustainability. And I thought it would be helpful to have those as we start to talk about the research and the key findings. Next slide, Anne. So we looked at an awful lot of research when we were starting to create our sustainability training opportunities and our sustainability support service. And I'm just going to talk briefly about this set of 5 reports. You'll be able to get to these when you are looking at the web. These are all linked. So a really wonderful way to be able to sort of create a system of checks and balances to make sure that you're honing in on the right thing. So the first 2 are fairly conventional types of research from within ATE. They're observational research where people went and actually talked to folks in the ATE community about how they were sustaining what they were doing. The second 2 are more sort of self-reported. So the third one on here, the conference, was actually one that Mike Lasecki, who came on momentarily there, you heard his voice. Many of us in the AT community know Mike really well. And he convened a meeting where he brought together a group of centers. And they got into the really sort of discussions around challenges and success stories for themselves within ATE around sustainability. So what they were having luck with, what they were struggling with. The 4th study on the slide is also self-reporting. It was a survey that was done, but people were self-reporting. So this is sustainability both here in the U.S. and overseas. Around sustainability, particularly of digital resources. So we have a nice suite of reports here that you can take a look at if you're interested. Next slide, please. The thing that's really interesting, as I mentioned, is that these key findings show up over and over and over again, which is how you kind of know that you've got key findings, right? They're the ones that consistently rise to the top. And I'm going to go through these a bit. The wonderful thing about the rest of the presentation after this section is that the folks who are also presenting will be kind of drilling down a little bit into some of these various areas and talking to you about examples and providing more information about how these have been implemented. So the first one is really important. It's really one of the big takeaways is institutionalization or embedding. So research has shown that the more deeply tied you are to your own institution, the more you're able to help folks see that what you're doing speaks to the mission of the institution, the better chance you have of sustaining either all of your work or at least the most valuable parts, the parts that are of most use to the end users, the folks that you're creating the materials or the activities for. The second takeaway has to do with defining your audience and stakeholders, knowing who those folks are, knowing who you're creating this for, knowing their needs, understanding them, really, really important. If you're not creating materials that are of value to your audience and stakeholders, you're probably going to have a tougher time sustaining what you're doing. Evaluation and understanding your value proposition. This gets into data, and we're going to get into that next. Elaine is going to talk about that. Understanding how to collect data that helps you recognize which things are of value is really, really important. Thinking creatively, thinking like an entrepreneur. This is something that came out of Mike Lasecki's report, where folks really saw the value in thinking outside the box and thinking like an entrepreneur in terms of the ways that they might sustain what they were doing. And then while it seems like it should be obvious, the earlier you start, the better. So thinking early and often about sustainability and integrating that into your planning. Next slide, please. So I'm kind of done with my portion of the webinar today, but I wondered if there were any questions, and I don't know if any have come up yet, Anne, for me or anyone else on the panel.
Well, we have one question. When
Okay.
you talk about starting to plan early, how early? We're just in our first year. Should we be thinking about sustainability this early? Would you like to answer that, Rachel?
I'd be happy to, and of course anyone else who'd like to chime in of the presenters, because you all have so much experience too with this, but I think that the earlier you start, the better. For most of us who have NSF grants, we are asked to talk about sustainability right in that proposal, and I would think that many of you who have TAC grants are also asked to do that. So even in year one, you can begin to start to think about how to put in place the ways to gather data that may help you and as you think about sustainability, and the ways to gather data that are going to help you evaluate what you're doing and what constitutes valuable work to your audiences. And if you have an external evaluator, that may be something that you want to at least chat with them about too. So from my perspective, the people that I've seen who have sustained things long term, they are in part successful because they start to think about it as early as that first year.
This is Elaine Johnson. I would like to add to that and support exactly what you've been saying, Rachel. I think that even within the proposal time itself, it's important to be aware that there are processes to go through to get information that can be of great value for sustainability over the long haul, and the inclusion of the evaluator is a very important part of that.
Thanks so much, Elaine. I know you guys are going to get into some of the more practical and sort of nuts and bolts elements of this, and I'm going to turn it over to Elaine Kraft, who's going to talk about sustainability and implementation now.
Thank you, Rachel. With the research perspective in mind and understanding the role of data, we can now ask the question, how do we want to approach sustainability planning in our project? The first step is to consider what our evaluators and data tell us is working. This is information that will help us determine what's worth sustaining, what works and what doesn't. If something did not work and thus is not worth sustaining, it is important to keep in mind that the less successful components of your work are still of value as lessons learned. It's very important to not only know what doesn't work, but to also examine the reasons why. Perhaps some of your assumptions were incorrect, or the economy took an unexpected turn. Perhaps partners didn't do their part, or there was an unanticipated delay in implementation. There are any number of reasons things don't turn out the way we expect that they will. If there are things that turned out well, and data show that the intervention or innovation was successful, then how can you keep it going? Some things will take money. Actually, many things will take money. But there are some other things that can be integrated to create a new way of operating with our institutions, teaching, serving students, or working with partners that can be continued with no money, but a lot of determination and planning. Next slide, please. Like my colleagues working with the Center's Collaborative for Technical Assistance, we've all been at this for a long time. I personally have been directing NSF ATE grants for 21 years, and I've been working with TAC grants since round one. I'm sharing the following thoughts with you from that experience, and certainly from making my share of wrong turns along the way. Many grantees make the mistake of thinking the college will be so impressed with the work of the project that project personnel will be permanently added to the payroll when the grant ends, and/or activities that the grant paid for will now be financed by the college. However, requests of this type may well result in a response similar to the picture on this slide. It isn't that the institution doesn't love you and all that you've done. It's just that their pockets are empty. That's what they'll tell you. All funds are committed otherwise. State support is dwindling. The college needs to be reducing expenses, not adding personnel and funding activities that were not already in the budget prior to receiving the grant. In some cases, college funding actually will be available to continue some aspects of a grant, but just don't count on it. Also, when the college comes up with financial support, it will be in response to a very impressive set of project outcomes that include return on investment data that show that the continuation will increase revenues in excess of the costs. Looking for external funding is also a possibility, but keep in mind that seeking external funding is a strategy that involves lag time and thus is hard to align with the end of the project. Back to Rachel's comment about starting early, that's one reason why you really want to think about this from the beginning. This is particularly true of grants. You will need to be preparing and submitting proposals long before your grant ends. And grant proposals must be endorsed by the college and be aligned with the institutional strategic priorities, not just something that can meet your project or personal needs. The NSF ATE program is an excellent place to consider working with your college to apply for funds to take your TAC grant to another level. NSF ATE funds can address faculty development needs, help you strengthen your industry partnerships, and stimulate program improvement in ways that are not possible with TAC grants. If you are new to the ATE program, there is a Mentor Connect service funded by NSF ATE that can help you prepare and submit a competitive grant proposal that targets technician education. The ATE program does not fund projects in healthcare, such as nursing programs, but it does cover all other advanced technologies that drive our nation's economy. For future financial support, donations may also be an option, but you need to be very careful with this strategy and work in concert with your college development office. Most colleges are very strategic about how they approach business and industry for donations. And trust me, they won't take kindly to unauthorized efforts to raise money. Generating money, however, is just one approach to sustainability. Let's look at the other, institutionalization. Next slide, please. I appreciate the DOL emphasis on institutionalization. Weaving improved services and innovation into existing infrastructure, adding or modifying programs and curriculum, and upgrading technology can offer sustained improvements in workforce development. This is one strategy that you can implement when you have determination, but perhaps little or no money. The important thing to understand, however, is that institutionalization does not happen automatically. It takes a plan, determination, and ongoing effort. It requires deliberate integration of new ideas, curriculum, resources, and equipment into the fabric of the institution. It requires a plan for adoption of equipment, curricula, and resources by those who will use and take care of them. It also requires, in many cases, behavior modification by those who teach new content or develop and implement courses in new ways. And ongoing work and communication are required to nurture and sustain partnerships. Basic human resistance to change is well documented. So how do you foster teamwork to pull all of the puzzle pieces together? One thing that is essential for TAC grantees, particularly those who have been hired for a project and are and thus are new to the college, is getting to really know the college and how the current systems work within the college. From the beginning, you should be looking for permanent homes and internal champions for various components of your project within the existing structure and personnel of the college. This is critical to long-term success. My advice is not to treat your grant as a standalone endeavor, but rather as a catalyst to move the existing institutional enterprise forward. From the beginning, start seeking out those departments and programs within the college that can benefit from what you're doing. Those individuals who will be interested in adopting and maintaining the equipment that you are able to purchase. And faculty whose interest is aligned with curriculum additions or improvements being developed. If your work increases resources, enrollment, and student success in existing college programs, you'll find it easy to make friends. Give some thought to who can benefit from the resources you have. As you work on industry partnerships, make sure you know which industries are already working with the college and in what ways. It is very important to collaborate with the right people within the college in reaching out to industry. It is important that the college speak with one voice to industry and that you don't appear to be making unrelated contacts that will be confusing and could even work at cross purposes with existing college initiatives. At the college and with your academic partners, work to earn the trust and buy-in of those who can become champions for the outcomes of your grant. Work on your internal communications. Tell people what you are working on and brainstorm with them ways your project can help them with their students or with other work they're doing. Keep an eye out for existing resources you can leverage through this process of discovery. For example, to help attack Round 1 grant at my college, our NSF ATE Center was able to share recruitment resources for advanced manufacturing programs, including posters, brochures, and access to high-end career awareness videos from ATE TV, all fit to be used to attract students. These resources made it possible for the project team to begin recruiting immediately. It was months before they were in a position to develop their own recruitment materials, and even then, their budget for doing so was limited. Conversely, the TAC grant acquired some resume writing software that our ATE students were able to use to better equip themselves to enter the job market. Throughout the project, we collaborated in a number of activities that benefited both initiatives. I hope that you can see that it is as important that you be as purposeful in partnering internally with your organization as you are at partnering with business and industry or other organizations outside of the organization. That is a key to institutionalization. Personnel turnover for your project is practically a given, particularly near the end of the grant. The permanent college personnel, however, will still be there. You will need to depend on these individuals in the final months of your project, and having strong relationships in place at that point in time will serve you well and will increase the probability that elements of your good work will be successfully integrated and sustained. Now I'm going to ask my colleague, Anna Koliopoulos, to share a real-world example of how a grant-funded initiative has been sustained. Anna?
Thank you, Elaine. Now I will talk about a specific example of a grant activity in its journey to sustainability. The South Carolina ATE internship program at Florence Darlington Technical College was funded by an NSF grant. After the funding ran out, this work was maintained through other grant funds. Today, South Carolina Internship Program has been institutionalized and is supported by a full-time position at Florence Darlington Technical College. Next slide, please. The South Carolina ATE Internship Program started out as a grant-funded activity in 2000 to provide a full-time position to develop and implement the South Carolina ATE Internship Program, as well as develop the industry consortium. The products of this work were the creation of the consortium bylaws and placement of engineering technology students in internships. The creation of the consortium was timely as there was a high demand for engineering technicians and local companies were stealing technicians from each other. Through the consortium, a base internship pay rate was established and a mechanism for industries to grow their own technician workforce was created. The benefits to the students were immediate as they were able to connect what they were learning in the classroom to real-world applications. Next slide, please. When the initial funding ended, the South Carolina ATE Internship Program was maintained in the South Carolina ATE Center through other grant funds. I think it is important to note that the function was maintained and not the position. One lesson learned was that this work was incorporated within another position at a reduced time commitment. Even though the time spent on the internship program in the industry consortium was reduced, the impact was enhanced as it was now incorporated into a project manager's position who also managed the NSF STEM scholarships. This provided students with one point of contact, and many of the candidates for internships were also candidates for scholarships. The combination of internships and scholarships has provided the South Carolina ATE Center and Florence Darlington Technical College with multiple tools to aid in student success. Another lesson learned was that faculty were not good candidates for maintaining the internship program. They were not available throughout the day to respond to industry needs, nor did they have the network or relationships outside their academic discipline to meet the industry's varied requests. To be effective, an internship program must be multidisciplinary, with ability to respond to industry needs regardless of the technology program. Today, the South Carolina ATE Internship Program has been institutionalized as part of a full-time permanent college position. Over its journey, it has undergone changes to meet industry needs and the economic climate. It has been expanded to include multiple technology programs from welding to machine tool to engineering. Through the South Carolina internship experiences, students have received a well-rounding experience to ensure success in their permanent employment. Over the past 14 years, 190 students have worked over 428 semesters. The value that the ATE Internship Program and Industry Consortium has brought to Florence Darlington Technical College's ability to meet industry needs has resulted in the institutionalization of this work. Now, Elaine Johnson of BioLink will share another example of sustainability.
Thanks, Anna. For the next example of sustainability, we're going to look at a BioLink example. BioLink is an ATE national center based at City College of San Francisco, and its focus is on biotechnology and life sciences. The BioLink has also been involved in a round 2 TAC grant, the Consortium for Biotechnology Credentials. So we have a long history of being an ATE center and a shorter history of working with Department of Labor funds. The Department of Labor portion of what we're doing is to be the hub for laboratory skills and also to provide a development of a stackable credential for environmental monitoring. The thing that I'm going to talk about first is how we began our sustainability planning early and to utilize data resources. The first one was professional development feedback. In conjunction with our evaluator, we have gathered data about the effectiveness of our professional development activities. Professional development has been a major focus of the BioLink Center since its beginning in 1998. We gather information from the participants at the workshop, but clearly it's better to gather information on the usefulness and the implementation of the workshop in teaching and learning. And we work together very closely with our evaluator to get that kind of information. We also are interested in how well our industry is engaged. We gather information from our national survey about how industry is involved with each of the programs that we serve across the nation. And we make that known on our website and discuss this kind of industry involvement and how to engage and how to grow that at many of our meetings during the year. We've also been very active in labor market studies. At first using labor market studies that were available through the industry, but more recently being much more actively engaged with a new organization, the Coalition of State Bioscience Institutes, that has published Life Science Workforce Trends in 2014. And we've seen a 15% increase in the job market since 2010. We've also been a partner in creating a statewide overview of life science and middle skilled jobs in California, comparing the supply and demand. And this was published in October of 2014. The learnings from that study showed a gap in the number of jobs that were being posted with the community college preparation of technicians. So it gives us some kind of information to be confident that our programs are really needed in the different regions of the country. We also have been looking and developing resources around the economic importance of the programs and preparing reports to provide information back to administrators of the colleges how important some of our different types of new programs are, particularly contract services. We're of course using our web analytics to identify who our users are and what that usage is, and there has been a striking spike in the use of LinkedIn for the biotech community. From the beginning, we have recognized the importance of archiving some of our materials, especially the Curriculum and Instructional Materials Clearinghouse, that those materials were meta-tagged and housed at Internet Scout, with the realization that we wanted to keep these materials after BioLink funding stopped. We also planned ahead for equipment maintenance because we have very high-end equipment that requires a lot of maintenance. Maintenance contracts are generally not part of the grant, and so we wanted to make sure that we had a way that the college would absorb the maintenance of the equipment, and we made agreements with different departments to do that. We're currently responding to some additional needs. One of them is the need for career information that is specific for the technician level positions. Also communicating this using both our web and our on-site workshops to clearly communicate with our colleagues about what we have available and what they have available to share with us. We've also, at the request of industry, developed an equipment distribution center of donated equipment that's very much needed by the teachers in the regions. And finally, we have clearly recognized the need for serving underprepared students and have created a bridge that is a model for preparing entry-level students who have in the past been screened out by gatekeeper courses. Next slide, please. So as we look at one example from BioLink, one of the things that we're really proud of is the development of a community of practice that has grown from a handful of fledgling programs in the country to now over 108 programs that are actively engaging with each other and sharing what's working locally in their own communities at their own community colleges. A key component of this learning community is the BioLink Annual Summer Fellows Forum. The Fellows Forum is designed to be a working retreat where the fellows have an active role in addressing the pressing needs of programs at community and technical colleges. We share successes and learn from each other. Over the years, participants have identified resources to pay for their attendance at this meeting. NSF has also emphasized the continuation of the Summer Fellows Forum and has included some funding for fellows each year. This face-to-face gathering permits us to dig deep into strategies for sustainability and leadership development for succession of key personnel. Our evaluator plays a strong role in assisting with gathering data and providing analysis. Our National Visiting Committee provides suggestions for sustainability that are then discussed and acted upon at the Summer Fellows Forum. We are now preparing for our 17th annual forum where we will be actively planning based on input from multiple sources, including partnerships with other like-minded groups. And now I'll turn it over to Ann Beheeler.
Thanks, Elaine. One thing I did not mention earlier is in addition to being the PI for a National Center for Convergence Technology, which is IT plus communications, I'm also the executive director for a round one $20 million TAC consortium that is in 6 states with 7 partners. And as a part of that grant, we did specify some sustainability originally. Most of it was institutionalization of curriculum and so forth. Some of it had to do with the equipment that was being purchased. But one of the things that we found was that after we got to working with our career coaches and our tutors, it was our general sense that our students that utilized our grant services, such as the tutors and our test prep software and the career coaches, we felt like they were doing better than the students that did not use those services. And as you're well aware, if you're a TAC grantee, you cannot restrict the services to just your participants. You do have to provide those services to others as well. But we thought that the ones that were using our services were actually doing better. And what we finally did, we got the instructional design folks to cross-reference our actual grant data of who had actually used our services to the retention data from fall to spring, and what we realized was actually better than what we expected. We found that the data indicated that fall to spring retention for those people that used our services was almost double that of those who didn't. Those who didn't use our services, retention was in the 30%, and those who did, it was in the 60%. And that actually spoke to our administrators. We were planning on retaining or trying to go for hard money to retain 2 career coaches. We actually happened to have this data come in at a time when we had a business group on campus, and we presented this data to them, and they actually suggested we try to retain more career coaches, and they actually also said that they would sign their names to a request letter to the budget committee suggesting that the career coaches had been most effective and that they thought it was a good idea for the colleges to go ahead and retain more career coaches. Turns out that the administration is going to the budget committee to try to retain a total of 3 coaches, and it's all based on data. I think it's very important. You know, initially we said, hey, we felt like that the people that were using our services were doing better. That was primarily on self-reporting from the students that were using the services. But once we got the data, we had hard data to present to administration. And based on that data, we're actually getting some results. Now, we actually also had some focus groups so that we have qualitative data as well. The students who did not use our services or sign our participant form, we found out that they were not using services mostly because they were really too busy to use those services, or, believe it or not, some of them said they didn't know they existed, which we found that to be kind of interesting because we go to classes and present, and we have all sorts of flyers that are distributed, and the faculty know. We also had students who had used the Transcender Test Prep software, and they found that that was a definite benefit for them because that helps them pass the certification tests as well as the exams in their classes. And then those who took full advantage of the services were wildly supportive of what we had been doing, and they were definitely saying that that was helping them along in staying from one semester to another, and in fact, on the next slide, in finishing their credentials. We do know that in previous semesters we have had a great increase in the number of credentials completed, plus or minus 40% increase due to, we think, career coach intervention, tutoring intervention. We are still working on the data overall. At this point, we're expecting the completions for spring, but it's our sense that it's going to be greatly increased. And as I said, I've already told you that we've gone from a request for 2 career coaches to be funded on hard money to 3. We do not know, in fact, that that is going to be funded at this point, but it's looking very positive. And as I said earlier, the curriculum is actually institutionalized because it is implemented into our programs, and that is the business that we are in. We also spend a significant amount of money on virtual laboratories, both the equipment and also on some small equipment in terms of computers in the classrooms, also specialized Cisco gear because we are in the networking space. We did get support from IT originally, where they agreed to support the maintenance cost after the grant was over. And in addition to the maintenance costs, there actually is personnel costs to support the virtual laboratories. We did create the software for some additional virtual laboratories, and there is some personnel support for that as well. We have been doing some of the required training and transition while we still have the DOL dollars to support that. So these are some of the things that we have been doing. Interesting enough, in the forums that we had with students with respect to the virtual laboratory, we found out that sometimes the students that were actually sitting in the classroom with the hardware there would do the labs on the virtual laboratory instead of actually getting up and going over and working with the hardware that was physically in the room. I don't quite understand that, but that's okay. I guess it was easier. And of course, the virtual laboratories are available 24/7, so they were able to go home and do the lab again. So these are some of the things that we've been able to sustain, and we did start very, very early in figuring out how to get the data to be able to support these sorts of things. So we're ready for our next poll. What do you think? How are you going to sustain? Are you thinking you're going to sustain everything you're doing? Do you think you can sustain 75%, 25%, or nothing at all? Or are you not sure? Let's give yourself a few minutes to pick your answer. And Mike, if you're still on, will you tell me the result? Because again, I'm not seeing the results of the poll.
Yes, and currently folks are responding to the poll. Let's just give them one more second.
Thank you.
Okay, friends, make your best Guesses in the polls, I'll give you a countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I'm sharing the poll now, and it says 10% think they need to sustain everything. 35%, that's our biggest number, they think they can sustain perhaps 75%. So that's pretty impressive.
Wow.
Third choice is I probably won't sustain more than 25%, and we had 19% of our audience choose that. But here's the interesting one, and only 3% said when the funding ends, we're done. So there's really an interest there. Only 3% chose that. And then finally, fully a third of the audience, 32%, said that's why I'm here today, trying to figure this out. So it's an interesting spectrum of responses here for you.
Very, very interesting. Thank you very much. Well, hopefully you will let us know how we can help you.
Okay, you're back live now. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So a few tips in summary to consider in planning for sustaining. From the beginning, figure out your best guess. What parts of your work will likely have impact and could or should be sustained over time, and why. Better to plan for collecting data on something that you think should be sustained and collect that data than to get to the end and not have the data you might need. And, you know, maybe you find something that you think is going to be wonderful and then it doesn't turn out so. Yeah, that's fine. At least you would have the data if it did turn out to be very effective. And then, are you going to sustain through institutionalization, funding through the college budget, like our career coach request? And that's a major request because we're asking to add personnel. Are you looking at in-kind support from partners or donations or a combination of the above? Make sure you gather the data to support your potential request from the very beginning. I guess that's kind of reiterating number one, but that's very important that you start from the beginning gathering data. It's very hard to go back and get it after the fact. And talk frequently to all of your stakeholders and also talk to other grant leaders and directors about sustainability. How are they doing it? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. How are others getting their data to support their plans? And I can't emphasize enough, you really need data. A feel-good feeling is not enough, especially if you're trying to get hard money. And continually refine your plan. We started in our consortium putting our sustainability plans together in year one, and we are still modifying them based on what's really real at this point in time. More sustainability resources, here we go again. Again, atecentral.net, if you look at the bottom, /sustainability has a lot of them. And again, when you get this presentation, these links will be hot and you'll be able to get to these resources. Now, questions. If you have questions, type them into the chat, and I have one. One person said, I think the National Science Foundation does not permit cost sharing, and they don't. In-kind in a grant proposal is sometimes considered cost sharing. If I have buy-in from my institution, how do I show this so it does not look like cost sharing? How about I call on Elaine Kraft to explain this?
Thanks, Ann. The primary issue is that cost sharing is now prohibited by the NSF ATE program, and so you have to be very careful in a proposal that nothing that you include in it can be picked up as, you know, is stating that you are doing cost sharing. What you can do is you can include letters of commitment in your appendices, as long as those letters of commitment are very specific about what these individuals will do and contribute to the project, but not in monetary terms. Don't put dollars with anything, but you can put that people are going to serve on advisory groups, they're going to, you know, go on weekly outreach trips, you know, anything like that's fine as long as you don't put a dollar amount with it. And you can describe this in your project description as well. Just make sure that you don't put anything in the budget and make sure that you don't associate a dollar amount with what somebody's going to do to support you.
Thanks, Elaine. And in terms of your own institution, I think it is perfectly reasonable to talk about what the institution itself will do after the grant is over. That's perfectly okay. It's just a matter of not talking about what it's going to do during the grant. For example, I think it's okay to say for equipment purchased during the period of the grant, the institution has agreed to maintain it after the grant. So that's a little bit different. I don't see other questions, so I'm going to move on to opportunities. All of our webinars are at 3 p.m. Eastern, and we have one coming up on the 18th. We've already done some webinars on ensuring effective business engagement, and we have yet again another approach on secrets for strong industry engagement. More details about this one will be forthcoming soon. We also have a conference coming up July 27th through the 30th in Portland, Oregon, and this is our high-tech information exchange conference that is put on by the National Science Foundation. But this one is really, really special for the TAC grantees as well. There is a whole track during this conference that is TAC specific. There are results from round 1 and round 2 grants and some round 3 grants on specific topics. And you can look at this particular website to register above. And also you can look at, if you leave off the registration.php, you can look above at the actual program and see what's there. Plus there is a free convening on Friday morning, the 31st. You're invited to come for that. And you're also invited to talk about technical assistance needs that you might have. We are going to have several people there who will be able to answer your questions, up to and including small consultation sessions that will be available for you on a variety of subjects. And so we are at the end. We will offer you one more chance for Q&A. And here are the links to the people that have presented today, or the email addresses at least. We are willing to help you, and we will be having more webinars. We're also going to be there for the high-tech conference, and we're very hopeful that we can assist you in the ways that you find appropriate. So let us know how we can help. Anything else from the presenters today, or any other questions that anyone might have? Hearing none, I would say that we are finished, and thank you very much for joining us today.